After Sunday's embarrassing loss in Washington, I don't think there's an argument anymore that it's time for the Panthers to be sellers as the trade deadline approaches. I'll tell you why right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter, at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, meeting tomorrow, I'll be right here answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get those questions in for the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The Carolina Panthers need to be sellers at the NFL trade deadline as we are only 2 weeks away. But we're going to talk about something here first that's a little bit more pressing and important because obviously life is precious, and Andy Dalton and his family were in a car accident on Tuesday afternoon. Just before I recorded this, saw this news coming from Jonathan Jones of CBSSports.com, formerly of the Charlotte Observer, saying that Andy Dalton, the Panthers quarterback, was involved in a car accident in Charlotte today. Team spokesperson confirms to NFL on CBS. Dalton, his wife, 3 kids, and dog were all in the car. Thankfully, no one from the Dalton's car was transported by emergency medical personnel. Dalton is being evaluated by Panthers medical personnel, and the team has no further details at this time. So we'll find out on Wednesday when the Panthers are back out there on the practice field whether Andy Dalton will be there at practice, whether he'll be able to play on the road on Sunday against Denver. Maybe Bryce Young's back as the Panthers starting quarterback, but certainly that's not top of mind. What's top of mind is the health and well-being of Andy Dalton, his wife, their 3 kids, and of course their dog as they get into an accident in Charlotte on Tuesday, which is the off day for the Panthers. And this is not the first time we've seen this happen to this organization where the starting quarterback was in a car accident. We go 10 years ago. Cam Newton also on a Tuesday back in December of 2014 was in a car accident with another car, 2-car collision. And he did not play in that game on that Sunday. He was able to come back the week after that. They had Derek Anderson step in. So possibly that's going to be another situation in Carolina. So unfortunate to see that news. Obviously good that no one had to be transported to the hospital from at least the Dalton's family, but still hate to see that happen anytime. We know car accidents happen on a daily basis here in the area and everywhere across the world. So hopefully Andy Dalton will be fine moving forward, that his family will be fine, and they can all move past this. But certainly that is always jarring news to see something like that happen on a random Tuesday where just that's not necessarily and think you're something you're thinking about happening to a player on this team. So hopefully everything will be great, and we'll see Andy back out there the rest of the season. But his status certainly, as of right now, this recording, is up in the air for Sunday afternoon in Denver. Obviously, never a great transition from going to talk about something like that to now talking about something so trivial as what the Carolina Panthers should do once they get to the trade deadline. But we are a Panthers podcast here in Locked On Panthers, and we'll make that awkward transition, as you heard there in the tease I had to the show. It's time. After Sunday's latest embarrassment, the Panthers, they got to start moving on and looking at their options at the trade deadline as that approaches 2 weeks from today on Tuesday, November 4th. It is an interesting time for the Panthers to have the trade deadline approach, as they will be flying to Munich. I don't know when that's going to happen, whether they're going to be somebody that goes later on in the week, as some teams have done in previous trips, at least to London. Another time zone over there in Germany, Munich will be, but we'll see whether they leave early in the week or later in the week. Either way, if they're going to make a trade, you would think they'd want to get that done before they head over to Germany for that matchup against the Giants. And after Sunday's performance, I don't think you can sit here and argue for the Panthers not to be active sellers once we get closer to the deadline, and really starting today on Wednesday, whenever they want to get that business done. And I don't think tonight here on Tuesday, after the news of Andy Dalton getting a car accident, that the Panthers are going to be doing business to try to offload any players right now. But it's needing to happen in the next 7 to 10 days as they prepare this Sunday against Denver, next Sunday at home against the Saints, and then get ready to go to Munich. They need to make some moves. And looking at their assets for the 2025 NFL draft, Panthers fortunately owned their first pick, which would look like to be the number 1 overall pick based on how they played so far this season. They owned the Rams second-round pick, something that people don't want to bring up a lot. When I saw Adam Schefter a couple weeks ago said, remember, Panthers lost to the Bears, gave them all those picks, Caleb Williams, yada, 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 and the Bears also own the Carolina Panthers second-round pick. Well, Adam, the Panthers traded away Brian Burns, used some of that compensation in order to feel fine trading back in the second round with the Rams, who were desperate to get Braden Fisk out of FSU, and got the Rams second-round pick for 2025. So great business there by Dan Morgan, the Carolina Panthers general manager, for them to get a second-round pick. And the way the Rams have been decimated by injuries, currently sitting at 2-5, it's going to be a pretty high second-round pick, and maybe not too far behind where the Carolina Panthers look like they're going to be drafting in 2025. So on their Rams second-round pick, their own third, their own fourth, their own fifth, the Giants fifth-round pick from that Brian Burns trade. So that's 2 picks right there from the Brian Burns trade the Panthers have now in 2025. They own their own 6th-round pick. And then once you get to the 7th round, they're going to have 2 picks. It's either going to be their own 7th unless it's lower than Arizona's, or it's going to be Arizona's 7th unless it's lower than Carolina's. The Kansas City Chiefs would trade them in with Carolina, who get the higher of the 2 7th-rounders, but only one of them, and Carolina also owns Kansas City's 7th-round pick. So just understand that. So 9 picks in the upcoming 2025 NFL draft, which is a good spot to be in. Now, you would rather have most of those picks in the top 100, which does not appear to be the case for Carolina heading into that draft. They will only have 3. You like to find a way to potentially get 2 more of those. And the best way to do that would be, well, I don't know if it's going to be trading away some guys now, but having compensation where you can potentially take whatever you get from trading potential guys like Diontae Johnson or Adam Thielen, and then be able to recoup that by moving up, giving some teams some assets that can equal out, bounce out to maybe some picks there in the top 100, or you could trade back from the 1st overall pick if that's what it's going to be, or 2nd overall, whatever, likely a top 5 pick. The Panthers need to be getting a massive draft haul as far as players, akin to what they did in 2021 when Scott Fitterer drafted 11 players. The Panthers need to come out of this draft with a dozen players at least, I would think, in order to start rebuilding here, as what they need is young talent that they can build with and hopefully turn things around. And the players I'm looking at heading into this trade deadline are Diontae Johnson, Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, Jonathan Mingo, Jadeveon Clowney. I've seen multiple reporters put out that Diontae Johnson, Adam Thielen, Adam Schefter's one who said it a couple weeks ago when he threw a Molotov cocktail, really a brick through everybody's front yard window here in Carolina, when he said that he's not going to be back next year, that they should go ahead and trade him, and Kansas City Chiefs will be a team that may be interested, and we'll see if that's still the case. We saw last week the wide receiver market really got going as Amari Cooper was traded from Cleveland to Buffalo. Then we saw Devontae Adams get out of Las Vegas to go to New York just to lose again with the Jets. So that's a situation that played out last week, and now we know what the market is. If the Panthers can find a desperate enough Kansas City team and get a day 2 pick, that would be great. A 4th-round pick, you take it as well. But Diontae Johnson, after only 1 catch on Sunday, a guy who was banged up with the ankle, and also someone who, when asked about the situation whether to be traded, he said he'll let his agent handle it. Not necessarily an endorsement that he wants to be here in Carolina. But again, what is the player going to say? Bryce Young was also asked about it. He probably should be up here. I don't know if Carolina now, the situation with Andy Dalton, will be looking to move off of Bryce Young. And I have felt like the best thing for them to do is hold on to him the rest of the season, maybe go back to him at the end of the season if that's what they want to do. We'll talk more about that based on what Dave Canales had to say on Monday during his presser after reviewing film against Washington. I would feel like the Bryce Young trade market would make more sense after the season, where there'll be teams that will be evaluating what they want to do at quarterback in 2025, what they also want to do in the draft. The Panthers probably get a better opportunity to do that after the season than right now. If they trade away Bryce, who's going to be the backup? You really want to have Jack Plummer be elevated to the active roster and be the backup for Carolina. I guess it doesn't really matter at this point in time, sitting at 1-6. I just don't think that that's what they want to do as far as what their situation would be behind Andy Dalton whenever Andy's able to come back, if he misses any time at all after suffering that car accident on Thursday with his family and kids. But Diontae, they're 1-6 now. Bryce has been benched, the guy that he was supposed to come in here and work with. Andy Dalton was a free agent after this season, and not like Andy really played all that well the last couple of weeks. And why would he want to re-sign here? So if you can get something for him that makes sense, why not? Adam Thielen, 34 years old right now. The Panthers can get out of his contract after the season, meaning the team that would trade for him can also get out of his contract. He is eligible to come off IR this week. We'll find out on Wednesday, as Canales was not willing to answer on Monday what his status was going to be. That also with Jordan Fuller, who was both of those guys on IR after suffering injuries against the Raiders in that 36-22 win. Adam Thielen, if he's ready to go, if he's healthy, that's a guy that probably should be shipped off, and the Panthers should stay younger at wide receiver and try to build up some of those guys. Miles Sanders, with Jonathan Brooks coming back, probably the week of the Saints game, I would think, or maybe Munich. There really is not much reason to keep him around. Carolina is going to have to eat a dead cap at $2.95 million. And I'm guessing the acquiring team is going to have to pay some portion of the remaining 2024 salary, which is only $4 million. So it's not like it's a ton of money they're going to take on. There's got to be a team looking for a running back that may be interested in bringing in Miles Sanders to the fold. And Carolina can maybe get like a sixth or a seventh if they're lucky, but that's draft compensation. Again, they could use potentially trade up to get some better players that they need to in the 2025 draft. They just have it for future years, any sort of trades they want to do. And then Jadeveon Clowney as well. They saved $10 million against salary cap if they're able to trade him pre-June 1 of next year, but they take on a $4 million cap hit. And as far as dead cap goes, and Panthers are used to taking on dead cap money, he has not really done much to warrant the contract Carolina gave him this offseason. There's a reason why he wasn't signed in the first portion of free agency. It's not like this is the guy that a lot of teams in the NFL are really trying to pay that much for. And I'm sure plenty of teams looked at Carolina and it's like, that's what bad teams do. Also, what bad teams have to do is overpay a player who has not been a Pro Bowler and really has not been that guy his entire career coming out of South Carolina's number 1 overall pick. I would think if he's healthy enough, got the shoulder, missed the last 2 weeks, was doubtful this past week, maybe he'll be ready to go this week. I would think that's somebody the Panthers need to go ahead and move off of. As is it going to really hurt their pass rush? Because they don't have a pass rush anyways, and they're paying him way too much money. And then Jonathan Mingo only played 11 snaps on Sunday, played 30 the week before. Jalen Coker has out-snapped him the last 2 weeks. He played 22 on Sunday, 43 the week before. Looking at receiving success rate, Jonathan Mingo is at a 36.4. Jalen Coker is at an 88.9, which is absurd, obviously, in a small sample size in terms of the amount of targets he's gotten so far this season. But he has already been a better player as an undrafted free agent out of Holy Cross than Jonathan Mingo has ever shown so far in his 1+ years here in Carolina. So that's a guy that failed second-round pick, clearly. If you can get something for him, that makes sense, of course, but really anything at this point in time, go ahead and do it. So Clowney, Mingo, Sanders, Thielen, Johnson. I don't think it makes sense to do it with Bryce Young just yet, unless the price is right. I think that it's time for the Panthers to look at what they have in the draft next year, which is 9 draft picks, look at what the issues, the holes are on the team. This really questions for Brant Tillis and for Dan Morgan, and to go out there and offload some of these veteran players that aren't going to be here to help them down the road anyways. And I get it. Diontae Johnson, good player. You love to see him get re-signed. I just don't see why he would want to do in this situation. I just don't see the way things are going so far, that being a tenable relationship the Carolina Panthers are going to have with him the rest of the way as things are falling apart here after a 1-6 start. So yeah, Johnson, Thielen, Sanders, Mingo, Clowney, maybe Rice, but I think it's a little bit too early. All those guys should be among the trade conversations, and a couple of them, if not all, should be gone once the Panthers head over to Munich to go face off against the Giants, as it's fire sale time in Carolina. Now, Dave Canales talked about on Monday, it was a humbling film to watch. Also was peppered with questions about Bryce Young and may not have a choice now to go back to Bryce Young. We'll see if that happens on Sunday. We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And looking over at FanDuel right now, Carolina, once again, 8.5-point underdogs, was 7.5 yesterday, now at 8.5. Looking over at FanDuel, plus 320 money line. The over-under is set at 43.5 as they travel to Denver to face off against the Broncos, who have a great defense, but man, Denver, Bo Nix, the way he's been playing, 8.5-point favorites. That is a tough pill to swallow for Carolina heading over to Mile High City on Sunday afternoon. You'll get started $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. In fact, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonNFL. That's linkedin.com/lockedonNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Dave Canales spoke to the media on Monday following the Carolina Panthers' embarrassing loss to the Washington Commanders on Sunday, 40-7 up there in Landover, saying, quote, just a humbling film to watch. And unfortunately, that has been a common theme over the last couple of weeks as the Panthers have given up 34 points, 36, 38, and now 40. And the trend continues. It's going to be 42 points on Sunday at Denver, 44 against just a depleted Saints offense. And then, God forbid, 46 against the Giants in Munich in a couple of weeks. So hopefully they can stop the bleeding defensively in the weeks to come. A couple updates injury-wise. Raheem Blackshear, who just got walloped on that kickoff return and fumbled that ball. Fortunately, Carolina was able to recover it. Game was basically over at that point anytime. He dislocated his shoulder. The MRA, though, according to Dave Canales, came out as good as it could. He'll be day-to-day, so we'll see how that works out for them moving forward as he has been their main kickoff returner. Xavier Legette also had some kickoff returns on Sunday as well. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Adam Thielen, Jordan Fuller, both of those guys eligible to come off IR this week as far as having their windows open. We'll see whether they will. Dave Canales said on Wednesday he'll offer an update on them. I assume he'll also offer an update on Andy Dalton and his status as Panthers again traveled to Denver on Sunday. Dalton was in a car accident with his wife, 3 kids, and their dog on on Tuesday, here in Charlotte. Now, speaking of Andy Dalton and the quarterback situation here in Carolina, Canales was asked about this a ton on Monday on whether the organization needs to get Bryce Young back out there on the field to know whether he can be a franchise quarterback. That was asked by Steve Reed of the Associated Press, and this is what Canales had to say, quote, right now, we're focused on the Broncos. Andy's playing this week, and that's really where our focus is at. All those other conversations are all hypothetical conversations that definitely, Dan Brandt, that we need to have. But right now, we're focused on playing the Broncos and focused on getting Andy to take another step in terms of getting us back to good football. Steve later on followed up by asking, have you lost confidence in Bryce Young? And he said, quote, this is about Andy Dalton. This is about playing the Broncos. This is about taking strides of our group that we have in there. And that's really where the focus is. So whenever asked about Bryce Young, he always goes back to, this is about Andy Dalton. This is about the guys who are actually playing. And I don't want to get into hypotheticals as far as the situation here in Carolina. Now, might not be a hypothetical anymore. It certainly isn't, as Andy was in that car accident, as we talked about. And we'll see whether he will be able to practice on Wednesday or Thursday or be there at the walkthrough on Friday and make the trip over to Denver. The fortunate thing is he did not have to go to the hospital, so it's possible that he certainly could play and that it may just be a fender bender. I don't know the severity of the accident sitting here at 6:09 on Tuesday evening. I just know the reporting from Jonathan Jones that no one in his family had to go to the hospital, which obviously is great. Glad, first and foremost, that he appears to be okay. That's the only thing that really matters at the end of the day. Not whether he plays on Sunday, not whether he plays football at all, whether the Panthers win games, the health and safety of all of us individuals out there. Be happy, be safe, be whole. I said at the end of every single show. So that's what's top of mind. But as far as having this conversation and how things have, of course, changed since Monday when Canales said these words to tonight here on Tuesday, it's no longer a hypothetical. Like Bryce Young may play on Sunday, but based off of everything that we have heard, but also seen Canales do, Andy Dalton's going back in there whenever the situation allows him health-wise. And Bryce Young will come right back out. As far as have they lost confidence in Bryce Young, didn't we get the answer to that question after the first 2 weeks of the season? That Dave Canales, at least, lost confidence in Bryce Young. he wouldn't have made that move. He still believed that Bryce Young was the right guy for the team right now and maybe in the future, but you don't make this kind of move. You take this job, the only job you interviewed for, the only job you could get to work with this quarterback. You have all these guys come in, this new offense, and then you bail after 2 weeks. Clearly, he does not have confidence in him. And you don't even ask the question. We have seen it. When he's asked about whether the organization needs to get Bryce out there to make sure he's a franchise quarterback or not, and he says, this is about Andy Dalton. Well, clearly, he's not thinking about Bryce Young. He's thinking about the team. And eventually, the joke person asked about Andy and whether he still gives them the best chance to win after the Panthers have lost 4 straight games after having that just great afternoon against a bad Raiders team. Things have come right back down to earth, especially on Sunday. And he said, if you look at the collection of the games that he's played, there's been some really good situational passing that has come out of it. We've had some explosive plays come out of it. The offense has run smoothly for the most part. I'd love for us as a group, Andy included, to find a way to finish. So yeah, he believes Andy Dalton gives the best chance to win games. And when Andy's healthy, he's going to keep playing Andy. I think that at some point in time, at the end of the year, it would make sense. But based off of what we have seen Canales do, more importantly, seeing what he's done, and then also heard what he's had to say, it doesn't feel like he wants to go back to Bryce, even in a situation where Carolina is not playing good football, which has not been the case for 6 weeks so far this season, but especially the last couple of weeks. If they're sitting there week 15, 16, it still feels like it's going to be the Andy Dalton show just based off of what we've seen him do and also what we've heard him say over the last couple of weeks. And last I heard, Carolina Blitz asked, do you understand this line of questioning about Bryce Young, knowing that the Panthers gave him all they gave up and that you bailed on Bryce 2 weeks into the season? He said, absolutely. He said he's completely sensitive to the questions. They're not unfounded and on base, but from my perspective, I'm trying to get a team to continue to take strides and take steps, and that's where my focus has to be. It has to be on getting Andy to play his best football with this group, a group that has showed promises, and then a group that has showed to struggle, and that's really where I can focus my energy on. He's the head coach. Yes, he's the play caller. Yes, he's this perceived quarterback whisperer, and that reputation kind of takes a massive hit when you come 2 weeks into the situation and you move off of Bryce Young after having a full offseason, and at least from an outsider perspective and a reasonable thought process, only reason you even got this job is because of what you did with Baker and with Geno Smith the last 2 seasons. So it's interesting to me, everything that's played out, kind of how he's gone about. And like, this is why press conferences in large part are a complete waste of time, because he doesn't want to answer these questions. It's been a ton of coach speak since he made the decision to go to Andy Dalton. He was asked about this 5 weeks ago, why he wanted Andy Dalton, why he gives him the best chance to win. When he even answered the question, didn't want to get into that. Said, I don't want to get into the scheme. Like what? And now, 5 weeks later, he's willing to answer the question, but also not really willing to answer any questions specifically about Bryce Young without mentioning it's about Andy Dalton. It's about the guys who are out there. It's about the team. And he made a decision after week 2 that the team was more important than Bryce Young's development. And it turned out to be the right decision. But right now, the team is 1-6. And there are questions about whether Bryce Young's going to be traded. There are questions about the future for the Panthers at that position that you were brought in to elevate. And that has not happened. He honestly played worse in those 2 games than he played really at any point last season. So there are questions about that. And he is, for the most part, skated by those questions. He doesn't have a choice now, depending on what we find out with Andy's health, whether he can play on Sunday, where we may see Bryce Young. But even if Bryce Young plays well, feels like to me, Andy Dalton's going right back in there because Andy appears to be Dave Canales' guy. So we'll keep talking about it. I'll keep getting asked about it, I'm sure. It feels over. I felt like it was over when they made a decision back after week 2. And after watching Andy Dalton play well, also watching Andy Dalton kind of just be the Andy Dalton that we've seen and why he's bounced around from Chicago to New Orleans to Dallas, now here to Carolina, it still just sounds like to me, and from what I've seen, that he's Dave Canales' guy, and it's not going to work out here for Bryce Young as long as Canales is the head coach, just based off of, I mean, again, everything we have seen and heard from the man over the last couple of weeks. One other thought here. He was asked about the young wide receivers and how they played. He said, rough day, not detailed football. I thought that we were making strides with that group. Yesterday, it felt like we were an overloaded that we overloaded that group, Clearly, they have to take responsibility as far as preparation, but I know that we can do better. Jalen Coker, 1 reception, 10 yards. Xavier Legette, 2 receptions, 3 yards. No targets for Jonathan Mingo. So not an impressive day at all for anyone in that wide receiver room, including the young guys. But this is really a conversation about Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, and we'll see what that conversation is on Wednesday. Of course, I had other things I was going to say, a different approach I would have taken, but once that news came out about Andy being in that car accident on Tuesday, it changed up the tone of the conversation and also some of the answers that were given on Monday, as there may be no choice but to play Bryce Young on Sunday, and we'll see whether that will be the case. And hopefully Andy is healthy and good to go. But we'll get all these answers on Wednesday and later on this week as Carolina prepares ahead to Denver, the face-off against the Broncos. On Fridays, we do the Keys victory, and on Mondays, or rather on Tuesdays, we review those Keys victory. We'll do that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Football season is back, and the best way to get to games this fall is with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to say more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy to see exactly where you're going to sit. And honestly, it is my favorite feature about the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. On Fridays, I give you my 3 keys to victory for the Carolina Panthers heading into that Sunday matchup. And on Tuesdays, we review how they did with those keys. And in past weeks, they've actually hit on a couple of them. This week, they missed on all 3, which is why they were shellacked by the Washington Commanders without Jaden Daniels for the majority of that game on Sunday there in Landover, Maryland. And I'll keep doing the keys to victory, even if it doesn't make sense. As at 1-6, we're getting to that point in the season where it's like, maybe we should just ditch the keys because things are not working out great. But number one, what the Panthers needed to do was hold up defensively, and Dave Canales said on Monday, defensively, it starts with the run game. And as we heard from J.C. Horn earlier this season, if you can't stop the run, you can't stop anything. And J.C. Horn also was asked on Sunday following that game if he was surprised. He said, not really. We haven't been getting stops, and we didn't get stops today. And that is just the state of affairs here in Carolina as they are extremely banged up. The Commanders had 421 yards. I wish it was only 40. The Commanders had 421 yards of offense, 214 on the ground. Marcus Mariota dialed the clock back, 18 of 23, 205, 2 touchdowns, looked outstanding. And this is a big thing. I know people are frustrated about Ejiro Evero. Someone was asking me, should the Panthers fire him and bring in Robert Saleh midseason? This is football, y'all. They spend the entirety of the offseason installing an offense multiple times. They did it during OTAs. They did it during mandatory minicamp. They did it all through a training camp for the first couple of weeks. Their defense is the defense now. You're not going to be able to change a ton. You can try to change a philosophy if you want, but it's really not going to get you anywhere. And I know we saw offensively with Steve Wilkes, they went to more of a downhill attack, and that was the only strength that they had. And they changed quarterbacks. Sam Darnold played some good football down the stretch. That still is an offense that we saw at points of times had some issues later on as they did change things up. Like couldn't really move the ball that final week. Tampa Bay had some issues there with the 3 turnovers by Sam and all that. You can see that it's possible, but it's asking a ton, especially when only one of the anticipated starters in the front 7 played on the Sunday. Shy Tuttle, that was the guy, and he was one of the lowest graded players on the Panthers defense Sunday afternoon. Derek Brown, done for the season. Shaq Thompson, done for the season. Josie Jewell has not played in a couple weeks. Jadeveon Clowney has not played the past 2 weeks and may be on his way out of town. Ashawn Robinson, who's actually been their best defensive tackle this season, did not play with a knee injury. DJ Wonnum, we have no idea when he's going to play. And at this point in time, is he going to play at all this season here in Carolina? I don't know. Because that timeline is keep getting pushed back to where if they're not going to open up the window now, we're probably not going to see him until after the bye. So it's not great. Like the Panthers right now, overall, they're allowing 34.7 points per game. And they have allowed 243 points overall this season. That is terrible. They have allowed the most rushing yards and the 6th most passing yards in the NFL this season. Opponents have scored on 55.8% of their drives. I mean, what in the world? They have missed 57 tackles. I swear it's more than that, but 57, surprisingly not the worst in the NFL. The only team that they beat, the Raiders, have missed 70. And I know that's going to be killing Antonio Pierce, their defensive head coach there in Las Vegas, who called out players who lost Carolina for making business decisions in that game. They have the lowest pressure percentage in the NFL. They only have 7 sacks, somehow not the worst. That belongs to the Atlanta Falcons. They are 30th in EPA. They're 31st in DVOA. This is a terrible defense, in large part because the guys they expected to be their dudes have not been out there on the field. The backups have not been better, as this is one of the worst rosters in the NFL. And when your top end talent goes down, especially on one side of the ball, you can't expect there to be great guys to replace them. And that has been disappointing, as Jero Vera, who I still think is good DC. Canales went out there and he backed his man and said he loves the scheme. It's not the problem. It's clearly that the fact that the players have been injured and even the talent level overall wasn't that great in the first place. I can't imagine that if Derek Brown was playing, Shaq Thompson was playing, Josie Jewell, Jadeveon Clowney, all those guys were playing, that the Panthers defense would be this bad. Would it be good? No. I never expected it to be good. But this is really bad. Number 2, they need to keep up offensively because we all knew there was no way in hell Carolina's going to win that game against that Washington Commanders offense that had been humming unless they're going to win in a shootout. And considering how many points have been given up, the Panthers are going to have to score like 35. And the only time they ever won a game was by scoring 36 points. So we knew that's what they needed to do in order to win this game. And the offense, well, they were not able to get off the ground. Had a good drive going. Andy Dalton gets pressured as no one is blocking Cleveland Farrell. He decides to not dirt it on that 3rd and 9. Instead tries to get to Miles Sanders. Throws a terrible pass because of Dante Fowler Jr. all the way back for a touchdown. And basically that was the game right then and there based off of how they played the rest of the way. Washington entered the game allowing 6.0 yards per play, which was 4th worst in the NFL. The Panthers had 180 yards for 4.2 yards per play. Dalton was 11 of 16, 93 yards, 2 interceptions, 3.2 QBR. That's the lowest QBR in a game in the NFL this season. Bryce had a 6.6 versus the Chargers in week 2, the 3rd worst QBR. And the Panthers the last couple of weeks, like the offense just has not really been good enough. Scored 24 against the Bengals, scored 20 against the Falcons a week ago, but then 10 against Chicago, 7 against Las Vegas. They're 28th in DVOA. They're 31st in EPA. They're 28th in scoring percentage. They're 25th in yards per play. They have a bottom 5 defense, probably the worst defense in the NFL, but some metrics say not that case. But they have a bottom 5 defense and also a bottom 5 offense. And what does that get you? To 1-5. Now you say, whoa, Andy Dalton, he's been better. There was some hope that Andy could be the bridge maybe past this season or just a guy. And I was saying the whole time, we got to let it play out. He's not going to play like he did against Las Vegas every week, but Cincinnati, that kind of felt like what you could possibly expect as far as things going well. They're not going to go perfect like they did against Las Vegas. And he has not been at his best recently. And you're looking at some of the stats, he's only 27th in the NFL in passing success rate at 40.7. He's only above Will Levis, who is injured but also appears to be benched in Tennessee. Bo Nix, who's a rookie, really has not played that well. Jacoby Brissett, who's been benched for a rookie, and Drake May up in New England. Anthony Richardson, who effectively is a rookie after missing the majority of last season, and he has not played well. And Deshaun Watson, who tore his Achilles and was the worst quarterback in the NFL, and now out for the rest of the season. So Andy has not played well. Honestly, overall, compared to the other quarterbacks in the NFL, he's behind Gardner Minshew, who has been benched but then put back in and then benched again. He has the 6th worst interception percentage in the NFL, 25th passer rating, 17th in QBR, and 24th in EPA. Yes, he's been better than Bryce, but has the quarterback play been great? No, the Panthers still have the 31st ranked passer rating in the NFL when you combine how Andy and Bryce have played so far this season. So they're getting bottom 2 quarterback play so far this season in the NFL, according to passer rating. And that's not good enough, especially when you don't have the talent on the outside like you hope to have and to help make some plays. And then number 3, had to take care of the football. And Dave Canales said, take care of the football first and foremost. You cannot turn it over and expect to have success in the league. And the problem is Panthers have only played 1 game this season where they have not turned the ball over. And coincidentally, not really, that's the only game they've won so far this season. That win against the Raiders, who again are terrible. 1.7 giveaways per game is 29th in the NFL. They have a 15.2 turnover percentage. That's 5th worst in the NFL. Opponents have 58 points off turnovers. The Panthers have 9. That right there is why they're a 1-6 football team. Can't take care of the football, can't stop anybody. Offensively, they're not great either. And, well, this is what you get, unfortunately, heading into another game against a team that's good defense, but an offense that can be shaky. We'll see how that plays out on Sunday as they face off against Denver. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Again, y'all, if you have not already, please subscribe over on YouTube and subscribe and listen wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where I'll be back on Wednesday to answer your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me right now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole, as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to you on Wednesday, where, of course, I'll answer your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions.